Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this extremely special episode of Jim's 5am Club, where I wish each and every one of us Happy Australia Day. Happy Australia Day 2022. A magnificent day in the history of a magnificent country. And today I pay my respects and pay homage to all my elders, past and present, the pioneers who left their homes to come to a new home called Australia, to shape it, to work it, to make it one of the best countries in the whole wide world. Our parents, our grandparents who came to these lands, as we said, who left family, friends, culture, and everything else. They gave up everything to come here to make a fresh new start. And just like today, we have a fresh start, a new day. So too, on the 26th of January, we celebrate the freshness, the newness of this wonderful country. The new Australia that was shaped and perfected by new Australians from cultures and geographies that spanned the world wide. Australia is a beautiful country, a multicultural gem that takes from the best and incorporates it in this melting pot. We are able to take the best of all the different cultures and use them to reshape this brilliant, beautiful diamond so that we can reflect the greatness of all of the cultures of the world and all of the people of the world who came here, as we said, to honestly build themselves a life and to make Australia home. I often ask myself, I often wonder, who has greater entitlement in this country? Do the people who today will be made Australian, the new membership group who today will be awarded their citizenship, who is more Australian? The one who is awarded their citizenship today, or the one who was born here, or the one who came here 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, depending on the migration wave that happened to form, or the ones whose parents and grandparents and forefathers were born here. And I've come to the conclusion that given that Australia is part of God's gift to mankind, and He and only He can claim ownership to Australia, then it becomes obvious to each and every one of us that everyone, every single person who's a citizen of this country has rights and obligations. There is no entitlement. Because I was born here does not make me any more entitled to a person who has become a new citizen today, or it makes me no more entitled to anybody else who was born here or who has lived here for years, decades, even centuries. Because at the end of the day, each morning, each day, each year, is a new start where God presses the starter button and says, let's see what we can do together to collaborate and cooperate and to become stewards in his program, in his project, to make this country a better country. So I, together with every other Australian citizen, every other person who claims to be Australian, celebrate this moment, celebrate this day as being unique and being very, very special, because without the help, without the sweat, without the blood to defend this country of all the new Australians and old Australians, this country would not be what it is today. Because as we know, we live in a cruel world. If we didn't shape this country, if we didn't work this country, then most certainly somebody else is planning to and would. So thank you to all of those who made Australia their home and made it one of the best countries in the whole wide world. And as my mother would always tell me, son, you have been given a culture, you have been given traditions, you've been given religion, you are given many things, all of which have been handed down from previous generations. You are a very, very important link in an endless chain, and you must never forget it. So your job, should you choose to accept it, is to honour your background, honour the hardship, the indignation that the first Australians, the Greeks, the Italians, the Irish, to honour the indignation that they received when they came to this country, because they didn't know the language, they didn't know the culture, they didn't know the tradition, they didn't know the laws in many ways. But they stuck it out, they banded together, they worked together to shape this land and to make it their second home, and to do it with pride. They invested money, they ran businesses, they employed people, they paid their taxes, they did everything that they needed to do to ensure that they were a full member, not a partial member, not a second-rate member, but a full member to this beautiful country that we call home now. And we can have more than one home. A lot of people seem to think that you need to have one nationality. Just like you've got two parents, a mother and a father, who come, or potentially could come, from different households, different villages, different regions, different countries, different islands. Just because they were born or grew up somewhere else doesn't make them any different. So as I was saying before, just because we all have the beauty of being able to celebrate two parents, or in some families, more than two parents. They could have stepfathers, they could have donor fathers. The whole dynamic has changed over time. But it's important to understand that just as I can have two parents and I can love them and cherish them so too there are people who can have two homelands, two nationalities or more, and be proud of it, not to be ashamed of it. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me on this extremely special episode of Jim's 5am Club, where we celebrate the birth of a new nation, a special country, and we live side by side with the first Australians as brothers in arms, not as second-rate people, and nor are they to be considered second-rate, but brothers from a Christian perspective. We're codependent and we live together to make this country what it is. And nobody has greater entitlement, because we all are equal. There is no difference between me or you, my children or your children. This country, as we said before, has one owner and one owner only, and that is God. And through his love, he shares this country with each and every one of us as a lease, not as ownership. We lease our time on this planet, in this country, in this land. And just like I can proudly stand up here and call this my country, so can anybody else who has the desire to come exactly to where I am and to stand where I am. This is nobody else's ownership. Each and every one of us are co-celebrants in this gift of creation. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm going to crank out a couple of book summaries this morning, one of which is called How to Raise an Adult, which I guess is an apt book summary, especially for such a special day where we all need to be contributors to this country and not dependents, and not to be whinging and whining and pointing the finger to others, saying that it's your fault that I am where I am. Because as we learn in this book, when you're young, when you're a child, you don't really have much say in who your parents are, where you're born, how you're born, what family you're born into, who your relatives are, where you grow up and how you grow up. To a certain extent, you're dependent on your parents and on others around you. And Australia is a country that offers the finest medical care, the finest education to all and sundry. We have a fantastic welfare system to help bring along those who have challenges and for those who are not as privileged as others. But by the same token, the big message that comes from this book is that sooner or later you grow up and you become an adult. And when you become an adult, when you grow up and become an adult, you can make every single choice in terms of how you're going to live, assuming, of course, you've got good health and you're not physically or mentally dependent on somebody else to cater for you and look after you. But if you're in full body, then you have absolutely every opportunity in this country, every equal opportunity to be, do whatever you want and become the greatest example, the greatest version of what you can be. So once again, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's sunrise. I'm on Mount Tomaree up here at Port Stephens on Australia Day 2022. And as I said before, it's a day that I pay homage to my first people, my elders, past and present, my parents, my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts. So thank you very much for being with me, for joining me on this vicarious journey. So once again, another beautiful morning, another awesome day. And we'll chat again. Take care and yassas. And I look forward to going on many more journeys with you on this and other episodes of Jim's 5am Club. Bye for now.